In a world where anything is possible, in a world where the normal and the paranormal reside, Almost Unbelievable brings to you the stories you want to hear, but fear to hear. Join us in the pit.
You have joined the Almost Unbelievable podcast with Cats and Ranty. I'm Ranty. Are you there, Cats?
I am here, and as always, and I think you're beginning to expect this by now, I've got a little pop quiz for you. Are you ready?
I'm always ready, and I absolutely love these quizzes, so I'm all ears.
Well, let's go. Have you heard of John Titor?
I haven't, no.
Well, John Titor, or John Titor, I've heard his name pronounced a couple of different ways, is an internet legend. He was a supposed time traveller who made his presence known on Art Bell's chat forum, which is linked to the old Coast to Coast AM podcast, which is another excellent paranormal podcast. And he claimed that he'd come back in time from the future to collect some parts from an old IBM computer because that technology had been lost in the future and they needed it for something. How does that sound to you at the minute? Realistic?
Going back to get an IBM PC, right, okay. I'm going to say, I don't know, I don't believe it. I just don't think that's real.
Well, the posts are out there. You can still access the forum. You can still read his posts. So there was a poster called John Titor who claimed that. And he decided to make some predictions about the future, a lot of which didn't come true. He predicted a devastating nuclear war in 2015. He predicted that the Olympics would be cancelled in 2004. He predicted a lot of things that didn't come true. However, he did make a prediction in the year 2000 that did come true. Now, he predicted, and again, this is 20 years ago, he predicted that the bulk of people's viewing time and entertainment time around about now would be spent not watching mainstream TV, but watching entertainment broadcast by individuals, normal people, filmed in their own houses and put on some kind of service that everybody could access. What does that sound like to you?
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, it sounds like YouTube.
It does, doesn't it? And he's been credited with sort of predicting the rise of YouTube, despite the fact that many of his other predictions become wrong. But he's got an answer for why his other predictions were wrong. And it all lies in how he refutes the grandfather paradox. Is that something you're familiar with?
Ooh, grandfather, no. Can't say I am.
So if I'm a time traveller and I hop in a spaceship or a time travel ship and I go back in time and kill my own grandfather, then I will never be born. And if I'm never born, then I cannot go back and kill my own grandfather. So the whole thing becomes impossible. Make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Seems absolutely fine to me, that.
So this was put to John Titor in the forums, you know, how can you come back in time, change events for the future, and you might not then end up coming back in time to change those events. And he cited something called the many worlds theory. When people at school learn about the double slit experiment, it's very famous. It's often cited there. And the many worlds interpretation says that every time a decision is made, every time something happens, every single possibility of that event actually happens. So if I toss a coin, it doesn't just land on heads, it lands on tails, and it lands on its side, and it bounces off the desk, and it goes down the drain. All the possibilities happen, and a new world is created for each of those possibilities. So an infinite number of realities where all possibilities are catered for. And what John Titor says was when he time travels, what he actually does is he doesn't go back in time in his own timeline with his own world. He actually slips into one of these alternate realities where things are just ever so slightly different. And every time he time travels, he gets further and further away from his own world and his own reality. But if he then alters the past in one of the other realities, he's not affecting his own future.
Well, that's very clever, I have to say. And to be fair, you know, I mean, this kind of makes sense in some way. You know, you can imagine you've got a tree and you've got lots of different branches. You go up one branch, you know, if that branch breaks on its way up and you've already moved on to a separate branch, then whatever happened in the broken branch's reality doesn't affect the other one. So, yeah, sounds good to me.
Well, it is. Everyone who's listening is interested in this. If you look up many worlds interpretation of the double slit experiment, there's loads out there on the internet. It's really fascinating. But ultimately, the idea of having separate realities is fascinating. And I do believe today's guest has a story that may or may not be linked to what I've just said.
Oh, today's guest. I have to say, this is the most interesting story I've heard to date. And we have recorded a lot of backstories too. We've got a lot of podcasts ready to go. And I have to say, like I say, this one really knocked my socks off. So I cannot wait to introduce today's guest. And today's guest is going to tell us a glitch in the Matrix style type event, kind of parallel worldy kind of event. And she has some evidence to go along with that too. So I just cannot wait for you to hear this story. Our guest today is called Alex. Are you there, Alex?
I am here.
So take your time. Just tell us the story from the start to the end, and we will try not to interrupt. Off you go.
Wonderful. You got it. All right. So, and that thing, this was, I looked up my friend's original post about these events, and it was exactly a year ago. So that's bizarre. But I live in a little beachside town, downtown area, right by the water. This was a Saturday night. My best friend came over. We were sitting out on my roof, we ate dinner, nothing. Everything seemed fine. You know, people were out, neighbors were out. You can see, you know, into a few people's yard from my roof. And there was, of course, like activity. And we realized it's like 11 o'clock at night and it sounded so quiet. You didn't hear music. This is a Saturday night. You usually hear all different kinds of music. And also I live so close to downtown, people park here and are coming back from the bars, but there was no sign of life, nothing. And at this time I had just purchased my car. And, you know, it's a 2016, so it's not a brand new car, but the joke that I had with the sales associate when I was buying the car was, oh, like who drove this thing? Because on the big plastic key, you know, that has the Honda emblem and all of the black plastic, there were so many scratches on it, all of these inclusions that you just had to say something about it because it was so funny. How did all of those scratches get on this key? Like, what was the story? We had a funny banter about it, myself and the guy who sold me my car. But so when we're realizing that it's quiet and eerie, my friend and I both started to get just very anxious and decided we should just take a walk and just we'll feel better when we see sign of life somewhere. It's just going to be better. So we got my dog on the leash, and I always take my car key off of my car ring, like my key ring, so that I just have my house keys because it fits in this very specific bag that I have for the doggy bags. So the key is left here, the key with all of these scratches on it, scratches that have been acknowledged with my best friend earlier that day. We leave, start walking towards downtown. There is nothing. No one is on the street. No cars, no people. And in my neighbor's yard, where there had been a very tattered Jack doll, like the Nightmare Before Christmas character Jack. I mean, it had been there since I had moved into my apartment. It was completely tethered and torn, you know, like brown, but obviously it was just something that they liked up in the yard. And as we're passing their yard, the Jack doll is there, but it is a brand new Jack doll. It's like, okay, maybe they replaced the Jack doll. I did ask them later if they did, and no, they didn't. They assumed that maybe it was a friend of theirs, since it is like an inside joke, that maybe someone did replace it. So I can give myself something of an excuse there. But behind my house, like I live in a little cottage that's upstairs. So you can be on my roof and you see the yards on this side, and then there's an alley behind where my front door faces. And there's neighbors back there that have a dog that's always in the yard that just always barks at my dog and jumps up to this part of their fence that was broken. They're right there in my front yard. So I had walked my dog around like at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock before she had come over. And now we're walking, it's like 11. We've been on the roof and really in my kitchen most of the night. So had anyone worked on that fence, we would have heard or seen it. There would have been no way, even no matter how fast someone worked, for us to have not seen that. So there were all of these things that seemed strange. It was as if, yes, it was my street. I mean, everything looked the same, except they were all brand new items that just didn't make sense. So we get very close to the one downtown street here, and whipping around the corner, there is like a massive truck that has like police sirens, but isn't really marked with anything. And it's chasing this, what I see as this tiny blue car, but it looks like super round and looks like a car that does not exist, or like a car that you would dream about because it looks like a variation of a car, but it seemed like a toy. And they were going so fast, and it came at us so suddenly. The only people on the road, and Stephanie, like she said that she only saw the truck Like, she only saw the truck and was terrified, but I very clearly saw this tiny blue car in front of the truck. And we couldn't figure out how we had seen very different things because it was, all of our focus was on it. It was the first sign of life that we had seen. But this was the one time that we saw two different things of this evening. So the high-speed chase passes us. And we're like, all right, we're not feeling better about being outside. We need to just go back to my house because we're in the wrong world or something. We turn around, and there on that cross street right downtown, we both feel like a sigh of relief because we see a girl walking with her dog, which she later pointed out, and it is true, the girl's stature and the stature of her dog, like my dog is a boxer, it did look like it could have been. Like, her theory is that maybe that was me in like another reality, or what I was supposed to be doing, something, because it was a girl walking with her dog, and we both were relieved. Kind of, you prepare yourself to make an acquaintance with someone that you're passing on the street, and I knew that my dog was going to want to be friendly with her dog, so we're like preparing. We look at each other, we're acknowledged that we're relieved to see another person, and as soon as we do, this girl thin air disappears, and we just kept walking towards and saying, what was that? Where did she go? There was nowhere, there was no apartment there. The building there was so recessed that even if she did run into that building, there would have been no way she would have been able to get to a door of one of the units before we got to where we had both seen this girl. I mean, it didn't look like a ghost. It looked like it was a person. She was in the shadows, and there isn't a street light there, so you couldn't make out any specific features, but it was a solid person, or what appeared to be, and disappeared. And as we walk up to the spot trying to figure out what happened, my dog pulls me across the street in a way that I have never felt him do before. And she got so sick that she had to sit down and felt like she could not breathe. I had almost forgotten about that part. And then I read her original post about that and remembered how she started truly gasping for air and just feeling that this horrible dread. I was more alarmed because of my dog. So I think that, I couldn't really focus in the same way, but it was an absolutely baffling experience. And so now we're in the hurried walk back to my house, hoping to see something else, some sign of life, something that makes sense. And there is still no one on the street, and we thought maybe we'll go see, some of the bars might be open, but we were just both so aware that whatever we were in, we were in the wrong place. It just felt wrong, and could not get back inside my house fast enough. And we walk inside, I look at my table, and my car key, I mean, I wish I would have known to take pictures of it with all of the scratches, but this car key doesn't have a single scratch on it. It was as if it had just been out of the factory, not a scratch on it. It looked like it had never even been inserted into a car door to open it. The general scratches that come with keys. It is a brand new key. And we both cried a little bit because it was a truly bizarre experience that I, to this day, cannot make sense of. We searched like crazy for high-speed chase, because usually things like that are reported, on the Ring app for the neighborhood that they have, or just a little write-up. But you would hear about an incredible high-speed chase that came across Lucerne, and we just wanted to make some sort of sense of it, and still none of it. I mean, the fence, maybe somehow we missed that the people who lived behind me put up a brand new fence, and we didn't hear a single nail. And the neighbors who don't know how the new Jack doll got there, and mostly this car key. The most terrifying thing was when I went into the Honda dealership to pick up, there were some, the warranty papers, and I was picking up the spare key because they didn't have a spare key for the vehicle when I first purchased it. So I don't know how it happened, but I had to go there a few weeks later to get the spare key. And I was so freaked out about it that, I don't know, maybe there's a thing where keys magically fix themselves, but I had to share it with the sales guy that had sold me the car because it was just so insane. And I go in there and I'm like, hey, Mr. Ryan, how you doing? Look at this. What happened? Because my joke was like, who drove this car? A bear? Because there's just all these scratches only on one side of the door and all over the key. I was like, look at this key. Don't you remember we joked about all of the scratches on the key? And he was like, well, yeah, well, that's the spare probably. So it's a brand new one. I was like, no, I'm here for the spare. Like, it's not in my possession yet. Like, I don't have a spare key. And he was just baffled by it as well. So it's such a, I don't feel like anything stuck with me or anything. It doesn't feel like paranormal or like that there was anything intended specifically for us or what we were experiencing, but whatever happened within that chunk of time at night is a complete mystery to me and still makes me really uncomfortable to this day to think about it. I mean, we became obsessed with it for a while and couldn't stop talking about it. And then I think we both even had to take a break from like each other. I mean, we're best friends and still are, but it was, will always be. We've had very other odd experiences, but this was by far just the most baffling, and that the material proof of it is, to me, terrifying.
I can actually hear in your voice just how terrified you are about this.
It was, the feeling of, I mean, that my dog was so terrified, and that my best friend, who is not, she's very like in tune, much more so than I am, but she really is, so very aware of things, and she doesn't frighten easy. Like, so for them both to have reacted so strongly at that spot where that image disappeared, and all of it, the feeling in the air, I can't like explain it other than like, it just felt like we were not supposed to be here, even though it was my home. It was not.
I think most people will agree that there are times in their lives that they've been walking down the street and the hairs on the back of the neck have stood up for no reason. And then they may have turned around and there might be somebody walking behind them. You get that feeling that there's somebody there, or it's like a sixth sense that just tells you that there's something wrong or something off. Now, as you've explained, that feeling was there from before you even left the house. This feeling started and built up whilst you were in the home, and all these other events, these physical things that you came into possession of or was able to detect, those happened after you already got that feeling.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Ranty said before. It's very obvious when you're talking about this that, it gets you quite emotional, that the feelings are still very, very raw for you now. It's obviously something that really affected you.
It absolutely did, because God, there was just no way to, I want to I can rationalize most things, and there was just no way to make sense of what was happening, and the absolute absence of life. No, you hear all of these animals right now, and you couldn't hear animals, people, nothing. And that silence was, I mean, thank God that my friend was here, because the fear, and maybe it was that we weren't supposed to leave the house, because it certainly didn't, there was nothing reassuring out there waiting for us.
There was a film that was based on experiences like this. I don't know whether it was deliberately written based on people having it, but it sounds so similar. I don't know if you've seen it, but if not, I'd highly recommend it. It's called Coherence. It's got one of the actors from Buffy. What's he called? Nicholas Brandon, is it? The guy who was in Buffy. Let me just see.
Oh.
Brandon Nicholas, or whatever he's called. I can't remember who he played now. But Nicholas Brendan, that's it. Nicholas Brendan. It's one of my favorite films of all time. So intelligent. It's so intelligent, and I don't want to spoil any of it for you. But if you look it up, it's called Coherence, and you watch it, I think it will I think it will remind you a lot of what you've talked about tonight. I think it will hit, it'll be quite eerie.
Oh, that's fantastic. Honestly, what is most terrifying to me is like that I can't relate it to anything else or make sense of what it was.
Well, it's such an out of the normal kind of story that you would tend to hear. The closest I can relate to that personally was an instance that happened with my mother many years ago when she went to go and get some potatoes from the shop and thought she'd only been gone for 30 minutes, but she hadn't. She'd been gone for 9 hours. And yeah, and also I saw something at the same time, a figure on the bus, a black figure that was waving at me, and then no figure got off the bus. There was nobody on the bus. I've said it on the podcast before. I've told this story. So that's the only similar thing that I can relate to as like a glitch in the matrix, kind of like lost time and things. But everything you're saying sounds...
Did she feel like she had just gone to the store and that she never was not like with herself? Wow.
Yeah, she said she went into the store, she bought the potatoes, came out. She said the only thing that she thought was odd was that when she went in the store it was light, and when she left the store it was dark. But she said she didn't think anything of it until we told her she'd been gone for 9 hours. And the woman that came back was a totally different woman to the woman that left.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Like for that, like for that day, and like what came back into like...
Prior to that, she was uneducated, didn't really have any get up and go, didn't want to do anything with her life, kind of thing. When she returned, she suddenly got a thirst for knowledge, took on GCSEs, passed them all with A's, took on her A-levels, passed 4 A-levels with A's, went on to university, took 2 degrees on at the same time, passed them both with 2 1s. Then she ended up getting a really good job at the civil service, and she got promoted all the way through that. Then she got she became a hypnotherapy specialist, a Reiki master. She did animal therapy. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And that's also very different, because a lot of times you're sort of horrific, but it's almost like an abduction, and you're going to be kind of gifted with this new wow, that's an incredible story.
Well, it sounds to me like you got this feeling that the woman that you saw walking towards you may have been yourself in a parallel universe.
What's strange is that I would have never thought of that, but I just remember I felt very happy that we were about to see another girl with her dog. I was going to feel better about the state of everything. But later, when my friend brought up, what was weird is you couldn't really make out details, but she looked just like you, like she walked like you. Her dog was the same size as yours. Like, I just keep thinking of that, like, was that you walking had I not come over? And I was like, oh, I don't know, man. I have no idea. But it's all so jarring, especially because whatever that vision was so clear to both of us. We both vocalized a relief to see another person and a dog. I'm preparing. The dog is getting excited because he likes seeing other dogs. And then it completely disappears into thin air.
I see.
It's terrifying.
Well, let's do some housekeeping. So, the fence outside that was repaired,
Yes.
when do you think was the last time that you saw it broken?
Well, it had been every time I walk my dog, which is always in the loop around my house. So the front, then around the street to the alley behind me. And then that fence of theirs is to their yard in that alley right behind my house. And the 7 planks that are kind of busted and a little jutted out is always where their dog comes and tries to get at my dog when I'm walking. It had been the case since I had moved in. I had lived here for over a year, and it had been in that same state, where it wasn't fully broken, but it needed to be repaired. And the planks were bent, and the planks that are there are new. And so the old planks would have had to be torn out. Hammering would have had to take place. I just can't fathom, even if we were on the roof maybe and didn't notice, we were coming in and out and I mean, I can send you a picture of how you can see the fence from my front door. And there would be no way to do it without that. We wouldn't have noticed that.
So you're saying that when you last took your dog for a walk on the same day?
Yes, I had walked him at like 6 o'clock, like before she was coming over.
6 o'clock it's all busted, and 11
Yes.
o'clock it's all repaired.
11 o'clock, it is brand new.
Okay.
And there's no sign of scraps from anything. Also, the alley was cleaner than usual. Like, it's, it's a gravel alley. They've since like updated it and paved. I mean, my friend was trying to justify a lot of what was happening. She was like, well, they're doing so much construction around here. They changed the name of the town. They put beach on it. They're trying to, like build it up. And yes, there is a lot of construction. They are paving roads that they haven't before, but they're not doing construction that is putting new jackdaws in yards or repairing fences only in one spot. And I just the other things just didn't add up. Like, yes, there is construction. There is a lot of, updates around here, but you hear and see them happening. It's not like just a magic thing that occurs. And there was just no way. Like, I was like, she doesn't know the fence, but my other friends who have come over, like one who had watched Zeppelin, was like, well, they must have fixed it and you guys just didn't hear. You could do that really fast. Maybe you were just on the roof. Like, okay, I can try to, rationalize, I guess, some of it. The car key, no, I have nothing. I have no.
I think that's the main piece of evidence, isn't it? I mean, I don't understand this object that you saw in somebody's garden. What is it? Is it a doll, or is it actually a toy or something? I don't understand what it was.
So it's like I assume that it was a Halloween decoration. Like there's like the Nightmare Before Christmas, the Tim Burton animated film. There's a character, Jack, and he really just looks like a ghost, really. But you know that it's Jack just by like the caricature. And I mean, I believe the doll is still there, so I can take a photograph of it for you. It just kind of looks like a ghost, but you know that it's Jack from Nightmare Before Christmas. And there was still, they just have it like sitting up in the tree, kind of looking like he's sitting in the tree. And had just been a very old doll. Again, it was a doll that was in there from when I had moved in. It had been outside for over a year. It was, basically brown and not white anymore. And of course, on this night, there's a brand new Jack doll in that yard that wasn't there when I walked my dog earlier. I feel like I would have noticed it because it was suddenly stark white, and that doll the
owners, they admitted they did put it there.
No, they don't. Well, everyone laughs about it, and they do always have like people hanging out there. But honestly, to me, they don't seem like the kind of people that would be like that would invest in finding a Halloween decoration. I don't know. I mean, that's what they said. Like, well, it was probably one of our friends trying to surprise us, but
I don't buy that. Not on that day.
I mean, it doesn't seem like a great surprise either. And if you do it, then you say, hey, did you like the new Jack doll? Or whatever, like you let the people know. But, it's like a few people living there and they're all roommates. So it was like I really turned into a little neighborhood detective for a little bit, just trying to make sense of that evening. And I was like, oh man, this is just getting worse, because it's like roommates and, they all talk to one another, but also kind of lead separate lives. One of them is in EMT and the other goes away from work. So they all also were like, oh, well, maybe it was Joey's friend. Like they all kind of said, well, maybe it was, something with the other guy. But the fact that none of them knew for sure either how that happened. And I don't know, the people with the fence are never outside. And I feel like a crazy person knocking on their door and asking about the fence repair, especially since their dog is super aggressive.
What do you think, Katz, about this car chase? I mean, is there anything you want to ask about that to Alex?
It's very difficult to process, isn't it? It's very difficult to think of any sort of logical explanation for that. In fact, I was more thinking about the car key and the ghost figure, but
that I had almost forgotten about the car chase myself until she reminded me that was the only thing that we saw, was that high-speed chase. And how odd that was, because that was the only time that we saw different things. We both saw a white truck with police sirens, but no police markings. But I saw a blue car. And, well, I'm going to put car in heavy quotes there. Whatever it was nothing that looked familiar to me as a normal vehicle. But she didn't see that blue car. She just felt the weight of how fast the truck was moving. And that to me is also just so odd. And that's the only time that we really saw different things, or that I saw something that she did not see.
How fast would you say the car was moving?
Oh, they had turned up Lucerne. I mean, I feel like they had to have gotten to like 70 miles an hour by the time that they hit the corner. Luckily, because this car turned, not really luckily, but at least the speed was broken there because that car had to turn to get, I guess, was taking like the side route. So we truly had to jump out of the road. The speed at which I saw this little blue car, of course, she sees the truck, but we got over to the sidewalk and they were already down the street. Like, it was also that the speed escalated again so quickly after both cars had turned that it seemed to like defy what is actually physically possible. Like how fast then, like that we turned and we basically like couldn't even see the taillights of the chase, which we should have been able to. It's a straight street. Like, yes, we could hear them, but it was like the cars were going faster than cars can go. Like, especially after a stop when you have to accelerate again. It was baffling.
I'm loving this story. I have to say.
Listen, it's taken me a year just to be able to talk about it. So I just cannot. It was, yeah. I'm really curious what anyone has to say about it, and I'm very happy. Thank you for this recommendation for Coherence, because even if it is really, I would feel comforted, I think, just to know that. I don't know.
Other people have thought of that kind of experience,
Yes.
It is an amazing film, though. You will love it. It's very, very clever, very, very clever, and it really, 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 really reminds me of the story that you've just told. It's brilliant. It's very, very good. But I don't want to spoil it for you, so do watch it. Let us know what you think.
No, of course, no. I have it written down. I'm excited about it.
At this point, I'm pretty clueless, so I need to go away and do a bit of thinking, do a bit of research. Because we normally at the end of the show we have a little bit of a discussion and come up with different possibilities, that may have or may not have been the reason for the experience.
Listen, I told you it's a doozy, because also it's just kind of so, like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. I'm sure that somehow there has to be, but I can't find it.
Well, the only thing I perhaps think about is maybe it was some kind of alternate universe, parallel world jump kind of thing that you slipped into and then slipped out of, for a time.
Yes, but that fence stayed repaired. This car key stayed brand new without scratches on it. Finally it has a few little things on it now. Like that's so jarring to have to keep being faced with these physical realities that, yeah, you could come up with maybe rationalizations, but like really the chances of all of those things just happening is even just as terrifying.
Yeah, and you said how emotional you were as well when you both got back, and how you've both felt the need to actually go onto Reddit and leave a trail of this story individually.
Yeah. I couldn't even believe that she was able to, because she wrote that right up a year ago. I haven't even been able to speak about it. So, somehow she, came to terms with it like a lot quicker than I did. I feel like I've experienced things that have been scarier, like a bizarre experience where electricity went out, and then also a battery powered FM radio went out, and there was a cluster of children's laughter at a ranch in High Springs, Florida, where we then found out a grandfather had murdered his 6 grandchildren and daughter. So that was terrifying, but it was like a moment. It was a terrifying moment that went away. This was just so jarring because it was over the course of a few hours, and the feeling like in our guts, it was like we felt like we had invaded a place that we weren't supposed to go. It was like an indescribable feeling. And that to me is what's so jarring about it, is that like, it was easier to have just a scary experience where the powers go out and some, spirits need to let themselves be heard. And it's just kids laughing like, all right. And it goes away. This, I can't make any sense of. And the feeling was terrible. The absence of sound, the absence of life, and how terrified they both were when we passed that spot where the disappearing girl stood. And that just, made my heart sink. And, yeah, like we're tough broads. The fact that we got back to this house and like, I mean, we didn't sob, but we both sat and like cried a little bit because it was, as she frantically searched for news reports about a high-speed chase, because we were just grasping for some kind of understanding. And, it's interesting, like her write-up, of course, is interesting for me to read now because you experience like different aspects. I mean, I forgot how close that she had been to that truck and how terrifying that part was for her, or how sick she felt when we walked by that spot where the girl had disappeared. I was pulled away from that spot by Zeppelin, so I didn't pass over that same, but the fact that both of them had that feeling, and that the whole that walk had been predicated by just an impending doom was like the feeling, and neither of us wanted to say that. We just were trying to have like, she lives 45 minutes south of me now, and we see each other, every few weeks, sometimes every few months. We're just trying to have like a nice night. Both of us are trying to not admit that we just have this horrible feeling, like an atomic bomb is about to go off, just like impending doom. That was the feeling. And then on a quest to go feel better about things. And it's Saturday night. We're going to see some sort of life out here. And absolutely not. Only apparitions of it, and a different vision of an incredibly high-speed chase that made no sense for the speed, for the car to have accelerated and the truck to have accelerated that fast from having turned off of Lucerne. It just wouldn't have been possible, or for them to have disappeared so quickly, for the taillights to be gone so quickly down a street that is a straight shot. And no matter how fast you were going, at least for a moment, a pedestrian would still be able to see those lights. For a moment, you would. There would be no way not to, but we couldn't. And I saw a blue vehicle that she definitely did not see.
Well, this is the wildest story we've had up to date, I believe.
I think so. Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys very much for letting me share it with you.
Anytime. And maybe if your friend wants to come on and share her story too, I mean, it would be interesting to get both of your input on this.
Absolutely.
One thing I wanted to ask, did you notice anything else change in the vicinity afterward? I mean, how long did the atmosphere stay?
Honestly, the way that it also seemed as if like the sidewalks had been pressure washed. They were like super clean. They stayed clean. They're like dirty and normal, like usual again now. But so many things, like the side of the apartment building that like you walk up, that's between second and third, right from my house. The side of that building always had it's like yellow, and it always had this sort of discolored patch, which I assume is mold, since all of these cottages by the beach have some degree of it. Since that night, it's all yellow. Now the paint is faded, but there isn't that patch. The patch isn't, which maybe someone fixed the patch that night too. But the amount of new material, and even I would actually be, I think that she would like to be able to tell her side of things too, because she's also familiar with the area. And maybe not as many details, but even she was like, doesn't it feel like a movie set out here? Like there was mulch in yards that didn't have mulch. Sidewalks were swept that, aren't usually swept. I mean, I don't live in a bad neighborhood, but it's not like a great neighborhood. Like people aren't really sweeping the sidewalks, like, or pressure cleaning that. But everything was so clean and new, and it wasn't like, I mean, we just kept thinking like, oh, we're going to walk out like tomorrow and everything is going to be how it was. It's going to be the tattered jack doll. The fence is going to be busted on those 7 planks again. But no, stuff stayed brand new, like a manufactured reality to mimic your own, but nothing really changed. And I didn't, a sense of dread didn't follow me or anything like that. It didn't feel like there was a focus on it. It was just somehow something mixed, and we ended up in an alternate reality of our own that somehow merged with my own, leaving physical remnants of replacements that even even my neighbors don't understand. I mean, I guess a lot of it could be explained, but I struggle to understand it, especially just because we both had such gut feelings of terror before any of the physical replacements of reality were witnessed. Just the feeling in the air and the absence of sound. We were already really both frightened and not wanting to admit how much so. And yeah, it got worse. But, you know, I mean, it's gone back to normal. I mean, nothing like that has happened since, but I still cannot fathom exactly what it was. It's a total mystery to me.
Well, what a crazy story. Katz, is there anything you want to ask before we round this one up?
No, I think I'm going to go and practice my Google foo now and see what I can come up with, because my brain is empty. I have no idea what I'm going to say in this outro, but I will go away and certainly do some practice. I just want to thank you, Alex, for coming on and telling us that story. It was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, fantastic story, and you're welcome anytime. And if your friend wants to hop on too, she's more than welcome to tell her story too.
Oh, I think that she would love that, and I would too. I think it would be great just to have, because, you know, I mean, I'm sure maybe we saw other things differently. You know, you can only really talk about it. So I think that would be great. Absolutely, I will let her know.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much for having me on. You've been such wonderful hosts.
Well, thank you very much, Alex, for being an excellent guest, giving us plenty to talk about, and yeah, we'll have a chat with you in a bit. For now, though, take care.
Thanks so much. Have a beautiful one. Bye-bye.
Well, that really was a brilliant story. I know Ranty said he'd heard that before you came on to tell it. I'd not heard it personally. That's my first time, and I loved it. So thank you so much for coming on. But now is the time when me and Ranty retire back into the pit and we have a think about what we can make of your story. So Ranty, I need a bit of time to piece this together. I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Well, what do I think? I've already exuberated enthusiasm throughout this podcast because it's such a great story. The fact that everything to me is so convincing. The fact that Alex has a witness to this, somebody that was there with her who experienced the same thing, the same feelings of unease, the same need to get out of the house and go for a walk. The fact that the area that she lives in is just very well populated, very active on a night, and yet on this particular night it was deathly silent. There was no noise coming from anywhere, no animals, nothing like that. The eeriness of this made both of the witnesses so terrified that they just needed to go for a walk. And then everything that they saw on this walk was just different. The fence panels, the Halloween toy, the car chase with cars going at incredible speeds that you just wouldn't expect to have that kind of technology here today. The fact that they saw a woman disappear with a dog, and then the lady walked through that area that the woman disappeared from and then felt incredibly sick immediately afterwards. The fact that everything that changed on that night stayed changed. And more importantly, the car key that she was given, the battered old car key with the backstory of having been sold the car from a car dealer who had remarked, and both of them had remarked, about how battered the car key was, to suddenly return home and find a brand spanking new car key that she could actually hold and touch, something that it just couldn't happen. This story to me is just incredible. And she's also kindly sent me images. She sent me images of the fence panels. She sent me images of her car key. And I have to say, you can definitely see where these things have been replaced. You know, it's as simple as that. You can see that there is a new car key. You can see that there is a new fence panel. Now, I suppose at the end of the day, it all comes down to the credibility of the guest. And if you listen to the story and you listen to how she tells the story, you can feel the fear in her voice. You can feel that she's experiencing this. To me, this is the most compelling story I've heard up to date, with evidence backed up. And I have to say, this has blown my mind, because I never really thought about the idea of parallel universes or glitch in the Matrix style events. But this, to me, it has paranormal written all over it.
And, I'll echo what you said there about the emotion in her voice when she was speaking. It was obviously something that had, really, really stuck with her and, really, really sort of not affected her perhaps negative way, but something that she carried with her, on a day-to-day basis. It was definitely something that she's never going to forget, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And what's more interesting is that I am really hopeful that we are going to get her friend on as a guest too. I have been in contact with Alex, and she has kindly given me the email address of her friend. So it's just a case of as and when. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we can get her friend to come on and give her own independent recollection of what actually went down on that particular night. I'm so excited, I have to say.
I'll be honest, that would be a podcast that I'd love for us to get on, to get her friend as well. Would be brilliant. So, I've been racking my brain about, if I'm going to take that story word for word for word, what kind of scientific areas I could put on that might explain some of them. And it's very, very difficult for me to come up with anything that's going to scientifically explain everything start to finish. But certainly aspects of it can be explained away by something called derealization. So derealization is a psychological thing which affects over 50% of people at some point in their life. So to say that somebody's experienced derealization is not saying, oh, you're crazy or you're nuts or this, it's something that everybody gets. And there are various reasons for it, but here are some of the characteristic symptoms that you're going through a period of derealization. The first one is that you feel as if you're in some sort of dream or fog. The second one is that the world around you just seems fake. You can't put your finger on it, but everything just seems a bit muted and lifeless and fake. A key one for me is the third one, and that's that objects look wrong. Objects do not look how they are supposed to look. So I'm thinking about the car key here, for example. You're looking at something, even though it's physically not changed, you are absolutely 100% convinced that this object isn't the object you remember it being. There's also effect on how you hear sounds and time as well. Time, you'll either feel like time is speeding up, time is slowing down. Everything is incredibly surreal. Now, these periods of derealization can last hours, weeks, or months, and then disappear and you can never have them again. Some people, about 1 in 50, just under 1 in 50, will have recurring bouts through their life. But that's the closest I can come to maybe explaining some of the things that were experienced in this story. And it doesn't really explain how both people at the time would be going through the same thing. I understand that. But that's the closest I've been able to find at any of my research, I think.
And just to add more to my part, because I do feel like I need to come back and in some way just kind of counter that with the evidence that Alex went to the house just a few doors away and asked the owners whether or not they'd replaced the Halloween toy that she saw in the garden that had been changed. And they said no. They said that they thought it was perhaps just one of their friends had perhaps done it as a running joke kind of thing because they'd left this in the garden. And I find that highly unlikely. I also find it highly unlikely that all these things seem to happen on the same evening. Now, Alex had been for a walk at 6 p.m. with the dog, and everything had been normal. And by the time that she went for the walk at 11 or 12 o'clock at night, then, of course, all these things had changed. And to me, I don't think some psychological episode could account for that. But that's, I guess, up to the audience to decide. Did cats have a very good explanation for what actually happened? Or was it some kind of parallel event? You tell us.
Yep, all the links that you need to follow us to our social media are in the description. We'd love to hear from you. And if you've had a similar story like this, we would love to get you on. But right now, I think it's time for me to go.
It's time for us both to go. Until the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.